Muito bom dia a todos. Vai-se dar início à audição pública dos candidatos a reitor desta universidade e é pública por força da lei e do regulamento, o que não significa que tenha um público presente muito substancial, mas é pública porque tem a potencialidade de ser vista por todo o corpo universitário através da gravação de televisão da universidade e da internet. Eu só quero, isto não conta para o tempo, cada candidato é ouvido há 1h30 para a audição de cada candidato. Cada candidato terá 30 minutos para expor as razões e o programa da respectiva candidatura. Fim da exposição, cada candidato terá 30 minutos para respostas, para perguntas aos membros da Comissão Geral e respostas, sendo que as perguntas dos membros para cada candidato não podem ultrapassar 5 minutos. Os restantes 20 minutos serão utilizados pelos membros com prioridade absoluta dos membros que não fazem parte das comissões que vão, de alguma maneira, ser o núcleo das perguntas a fazer ao candidato. Há 4 comissões no Conselho Geral, uma de ensino, que será a primeira, outra de investigação e inovação será a segunda, outra de planeamento e financiamento e outra de governação. Por esta ordem haverá a intervenção das perguntas aos candidatos. Eu devo começar por fazer um agradecimento muito especial, primeiro aos candidatos, pela coragem cívica de arriscarem, digamos, as suas candidaturas a este grau de gestão do governo da Universidade do Porto, que é a universidade, ou uma das universidades maiores de Portugal e com grande prestígio europeu e internacional. Devo também sublinhar que, e quero deixar este ponto bem claro, que tive muita satisfação em ter ouvido as entrevistas de cada um dos candidatos pela TV universitária, TVU, o que deu desde logo a possibilidade de eu ficar com uma ideia. Eu estou a falar por mim, os candidatos falarão cada um por eles, com uma ideia do perfil de cada um dos candidatos. Quase que arriscaria a dizer o seguinte: lendo os programas escritos e ouvindo as entrevistas, tenho condições para, em consciência, poder votar. Mas sou eu que estou a falar da minha posição. O eleitorado aqui são os candidatos, membros do Conselho Geral. Devo também dizer que esta sessão será subordinada, digamos, à observância dos seguintes princípios que eu peço que sejam cumpridos. O primeiro é o princípio da concisão ou síntese, quer na exposição do próprio candidato, quer na colocação das questões pelos membros do Conselho Geral. O segundo princípio que me parece importante é o da não repetição das questões que já foram colocadas. Se já foram colocadas questões ao candidato, é óbvio que é uma perda de tempo estar a repetir a mesma questão. O terceiro princípio é o da limitação dos tempos. Isto tem tempos que estão regulamentados e, segundo o regulamento, é a Comissão Eleitoral que os definiu, e já os definiu, portanto, 1h30, e com esta repartição que dissemos. Portanto, não repetição, a limitação dos tempos das intervenções, quer dos candidatos, quer dos eleitores. E, finalmente, é um princípio que me parece básico, o da não obrigatoriedade de colocação de questões. O facto de estarem aqui 20 membros do Conselho Geral não quer dizer que todos e cada um tenham a obrigação de colocar questões. Como também é óbvio, isso depende do talento do candidato, que também não tem a obrigação de responder às questões que lhe são colocadas. Podemos aqui adotar, que estamos habituados todos a ver as entrevistas dos políticos, muitas vezes respondem não respondendo, ou não respondem respondendo. Portanto, não obrigatoriedade das questões. Este tempo que eu utilizei não conta, o que vai passar a contar é o tempo desde a entrada do candidato, que eu peço que seja chamado, e por uma questão de fluidez, eu vou delegar no vice-presidente que, além do mais, além de todas as qualidades que o vice-presidente teve, é inglês e, portanto, é capaz de ter dupla nacionalidade. É inglês de coração e de língua.
Português de coração.
E de língua. Please, can you... E passo então a palavra ao senhor vice-presidente Porto. Please sit down.
Thank you, sir.
If you don't mind, my English is very bad, so I will ask to Vice President to conduct your audition.
Sure, sir.
Professor Arora, on behalf of the University of Porto, I would like to welcome you to this audience and thank you for having submitted your application to be the Dean of this great university. The President has asked me to conduct this part of the meeting this morning because I speak English, and so I will try and coordinate your part of this morning's proceedings. I would like to, you received, I think, last night, the order that we will conduct this morning. So we have until 11:30 for the members of the General Council of the university who are here. The three of us here on this table are also members of the General Council, the President, the Secretary, and I'm Vice President. And these are all the members of the General Council, and ultimately it's these ladies and gentlemen who will decide who will be the future Dean of the University. They've all received your papers, your CV, your application letter, and I know that the members of the General Council will have studied with a lot of care your proposals as well as the other three candidates who are not here. So how the President and this proceedings will be organised is that you have up to 30 minutes to present your own view of the university and what you can bring to it, followed by each commission, because the General Council has four commissions, Education Committee, R&D Committee and Internationalisation, a Planning and Finance Commission, yes, and a Governance Commission. So four commissions, of which many of the members of the General Council are part of that. Each one of those commissions will have 10 minutes to make various questions to you, and we'd ask you to reply. Sure. And then finally there will be 20 minutes at the end for other members of the General Council who are not on any particular commission who will be asking you questions. So without any further delay, I would propose that you initiate your presentation on your how you see this university and what you could bring to it.
Sure. In the name of Lord Almighty, seek His presence here. Good morning, Mr. President, right of the General Council, members of the dais, and also the members of the General Council, the general public, the professors, the staff, and the students' community. A very warm good morning, bom dia. Myself, Professor Dr. Rajesh Arora, I would be presenting my case very persuasively about how I see this university to grow in the next 4 years. That's 2014 to 2018, 2014 to 2018. As the Vice President has already communicated as to how 30 minutes are going to be presented, the three aspects of the presentations for the first 30 minutes, we are going to focus on the statement of reasons. That's the starters. We're talking about the profile analysis, introducing the theme of higher education in challenges which are faced by universities today, and what could be the scenario planning for 2014 to 2018 to see for University of Porto. And finally, we talk about the program which we have already presented at the time of application. The strategic vision. Every organization thinks about what should be the future of the organization, how the progression has to happen everywhere. I have a vision. My vision is to contribute to human capital enhancement initiatives, a place where employability speaks about an individual, a place where competency talks about talent is available, a place where there is a lot of mobility. At the same time, it's important in a stressful life to have a work-life balance. All this needs to be done at two levels. One I'm talking about at the industry, and the second I'm talking about is the academic and administration globally. I'm sure everyone would be wondering, how do we balance between the industry and academics? I would like to present my case very persuasively there to talk about the first aspect, the industry and academic exposures that I have in my profile. I started my career in sales and marketing way back in 1988. And for the first 10 years of my life, I spent my time in the industry in sales and marketing. At the same time, I also started being a visiting faculty in various management institutes in India in the year 1994. And that's how I could see the balance between industry and academics. And today, with 25 years of journey, I can talk about what the industry is expecting from the university environment, what they're expecting from the students. And that's how the process has really gone up ahead. Looking from the perspective of how the contribution I've made into the higher education institutions in the last 15 years of my life, if I present you proudly, I'm a student of, ex-student of University of Mumbai, which has almost the 200 years of existence in their profile. I've done my doctorate there. I did my MBA at University of Mumbai, which is one of the accredited universities internationally. University of Pune, where I was a professor come director of the university of Dr. D.Y. Patil Institute of Management Studies. And finally, I want to talk about the most important aspect of my profile, TAC Training International, which is a UK-based organization that changed my life in 1998. I taught from 1994 to 1998. I thought I'm teaching very well. But when I came and interacted with an organization called TAC Training International, I realized what is the difference between teaching, training, coaching, counseling, and mentoring. And that's where I learned a lot of skills as to how to deliver your session more professionally. And be it any particular industry, if we talk about international clients, national clients, FMCG, consumer durables, oil, power, gas, banking, finance, insurance, automotives, manufacturing, you name the company in India. I've done a workshop there from the front line to the senior management levels to enhance the employability and capability of the individuals. These are some of the international clients which I would love to talk about, where we have done a lot of work in the last 15 years of my life in research, consulting, and training. Going back to the university association, because academic is a very important element in this presentation we are talking about. So I want to talk about Hereford University, UK. That's where my first association internationally happened in 2003 as a visiting professor, and then I was the principal of the business school in Kuwait, and then later on as a program coordinator in Dubai. IMT Dubai, that's where I was a visiting professor. Informatics Singapore, they have the sections in Kuwait to do certain CBT based programs of Thompson's Learning, the instructor led training. Of late, from the last year 2013, I've been a visiting professor with DHPW Germany at Stuttgart and Heidenheim, and also with the Graduate School of Otzoberg in Germany, which I started this year for the MBA program. I've been associated with University of Cape Coast and London Metropolitan University in my previous job as a vice president of the university, King's University College, and that's where we were affiliated to these universities. Now, when I present these slides, I'm talking about the systems and processes. Everywhere are different, cultures are different, countries are different, and if I want to link everything, how do we talk about this? Number one, very clearly we say that we need to understand the basic laws which are prescribed in this particular places, whether it is Dubai, it is Kuwait, it is India, it is Africa, or now it would be Portugal. So you need to understand the educational laws and systems which exist in each of this country to work it out. So we're talking about interaction with government bodies like India. We have All India Council of Technical Education, which is one of the body which gives sanctions to start new institutions. At the same time, we have the National Accreditation Board, which is the quality assurance agency which communicates what would be the grading of every institution in India. In the same way, we have in Ghana the National Accreditation Board, and we have certain agencies in Dubai which also looks after sanctions and qualities of the entire event. And I'm sure when I look at the Europe, I see the European Quality Assurance Register, I see the European University Associations and National Qualification Framework. So there are so many international bodies which are controlling, which are contributing, which are guiding, which are directing various universities in Europe. So I talk about the interaction with government bodies. That's where the experience I gained from different countries working with them. And that communicates my adaptability to work with various cross-cultural nationalities and understand the basic laws of the country faster. Talking about systems and processes everywhere, we talk about the teaching, the learning, and the assessments. As I say, if I have someone from the civil engineering department, the fundamentals of constructing a building or any infrastructure cannot change, whether it is Portugal, India, or Dubai. It would remain the same. In the same way, running an institution or running a university, it requires certain basic hardwares and softwares. We talk about the teaching, the learning, and assessments, which are the software of the university, and the hardwares from the admission to the processes and to the exit to emplacements and employability and mobility of students to be run up. So looking at all these aspects, we need to create systems and processes, and I'm sure a university of repute like this with 100 years of existence has most of the systems and processes in place, and I was very happy to see the website of the university, which contributed a lot of factual information as to how the university is contributing in each and every area. So we look at systems and processes. We talk about the research and development, because that's one of the important element also in the academic profile of any candidate who applies for the university. Without research, it doesn't work out at all. I always say observation leads to research, and research leads to your observation on research. And as a result, right from my institutional days, my master's program is a research program, and that's how we learn a lot. As the experience curve has moved upward, I've been able to see that it's important for us to bring the research learnings to the classroom, and the students also gets a benefit of understanding the research done by the professors. So that's one way to look at it. Some of the pointers which I would love to talk about is the being an advisory member at University of Middlesex, also at the University of Greenwich for a session chair, which is upcoming in the month of August and September, and it was in the same way last year in 2013 too. I've been delegated as a title of a host scientist by Government of India, FICCI, Department of Science and Technology, as a Dr. C.V. Raman Fellowship Program, which is a postdoctoral program. Companies, institutions like National Council of Education, Research and Technology, Indian Society of Training and Development, where we've been working to do a lot of research work with those candidates who are interested to complete their assignments there. And in Africa, we have one of the topmost science and technology university, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where I'm the member of the academic advisory body in terms of conducting the conference. At the same time, a research paper reviewer of the committee for an upcoming conference in the month of September this year. These are various contributions which I talk in terms of the research, which I would be highlighting it here. So that's where, to sum up with my vision, which I talked about in terms of enhancing the human capital enhancement, right, with the employability standards to be higher, with competencies levels, we look at the breakup of the profile and scenario, that this is where my experience stays here. Humanistic and scientific environment, keeping in mind to deal with people. I always say that universities are for students and the academia. Without the students, the university cannot exist. And as a result, I say that's the first thing, to have a very broad-based knowledge vision, but at the same time being human, because students' careers are extremely important. Because when they spend the 3+2+3 system in a university environment, it shapes up next 15-20 years of their life. And hence these 5 to 8 years are extremely critical for them, how they will be shaped up in this university. And that's where we talk about the humanistic vision. And finally, to conclude quickly on my profile, the statement of reasons, I would say that I enjoy my work, right? And I do what I love. And that is why I'm here at University of Porto for this position. I'm very much influenced by the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Dr. Stephen Covey, which talks about proactivity, ownership, accountability, right? Empathetic listening, right, which are very important variables, collaborative, cohesiveness, transparency. I think these are the professional values I've been always demonstrating at workplace. And I would be very happy to continue with my profile and my personality fabric in the same manner. The next part, which I'm quickly communicating about, the introduction to the theme, which we talked about it. I've been always asked a question, what is the theme all about, and why do we say envision for the future? That's how we're looking at it. So these are certain issues which I could really figure it out through a lot of research which was done on the net itself, I would say, and thanks to the internet and technology, and I see some ICT professors could also be here, which gave me an opportunity to understand what European scenario could be. And as a result, certain important elements which I would like to highlight here is the globalization, the competitiveness that's happening, the ups and downs which is happening in the European economy we are talking about. At the same time, how the nations have come together for the Bologna process, right? How different the Berlin Communique or Lisbon Treaty has been discussed more and again, and how it has been creating a lot of pressure on various universities and higher academic institutions, educational institutions all over Europe to upscale and upgrade their academic qualifications. At the same time, it is putting a lot of pressure on the operational levels, academic operations level, at the same time for the students. One interesting thing which I saw, that there was different levels of qualification in terms of how the curriculum has to be designed. And I think that's where a lot of institutions have started working towards it. And this is where I say the first is the role of higher education institution, and the strategic orientation comes up in terms of the mobility, in terms of globalization, in terms of employability enhancement initiatives for the students community, so that they are able to find out a job for themselves. Being a director of a management institute for the last 1 decade and managing various institutions, one common question which has always come in India from the students community at the time of admission is, will I get a job after completing the course? And my answer to them was always no. And they used to be very much surprised. Why is the director saying that you won't get a job after this? Because my job is not to coach you for a job. My job is to coach you for life. And as a result, we used to communicate very clearly in India. One of my Indian friend is also here, because these challenges are faced by students everywhere. The role of an education institution is not to create students' population for a job, but the role of an education institution is to create lifelong learnings for them, so that they're able to lead their life. If I just take you back to the slide here, which I talked about TAG Training International, where I worked at 1998 for the first time in my life, and I want to endorse here that whatever I learned here in 6 years in this job, they taught me how to fish for life. So today, even if I don't teach, or I'm not in university or an academic institution, I will still go back to organizations, do research, consulting and training for them. And that is what I learned from organizations, and that is what I would look forward for as a vision of every university, that we create students where they get lifelong learning. And at the same time, they also understand it is important for us that if you complete your masters, your education is not complete. You have to also upgrade and upskill your programs. As the certifications are available, we have ASTD, we have CIPD, we have Cisco's, and we have Microsoft certified developers. Everything is available in the world, but it's so important for us that we are going to regularly upskill ourselves and learn more, because that enhances the employability. So that's where the strategic orientation is coming up. Now, between the higher education institution and the strategic orientation, we want to do so many things at the same time. But where is the staff? What about their development? Sometimes I say the academics are totally involved in developing students and we forget about our development. So hence it is important, if the laws are changing, if the education environment is changing, if the industry expectations are changing, it's important that the academia also accepts, embraces those challenges, those changes, and accordingly they also get to know how to develop themselves. There could be in manufacturing sectors where we have trained, I have personally noticed that there is a great divide between the senior and a junior in a manufacturing sector, because the manufacturing general manager operations is working for last 15-20 years, right? And the new MBA comes, the new production engineer comes and joins the floor and says he would like to do something new. I can visualize sometimes in university environments all over the world, could be where you have senior academicians and you have some very junior academicians who have just entered the field. And as a result, you find that we need to become very good coaching buddies for those young enterprising academicians, so that we are able to train them, because when we entered the field of education, there was no one to train us actually. So those are the challenges which we see. So staff development is extremely important for us to look from different angles, and not only for teaching, learning, innovation, research, but I would say even sometimes for soft skill initiatives, because there has to be a career mobility even for the academia, right? So we look at not only the academic positions to reach to a professor, but I'm sure there will be a lot of other opportunities to look at it. At the same time, the students' interest and employability. There are lots of faculties which we are talking about. We are talking about a business school. We are talking about a large number of students. We are looking at different courses which are already run at this university, and the situation is the same everywhere. I'm sure, and my members of the General Council would also agree, that the fundamentals of any course would not change from country to country. If I'm teaching electronics engineering or chemical engineering or computer engineering, or I'm teaching food science and nutrition or psychology, or I'm teaching mathematics or basic sciences or management or business administration, it all remains the same. But what's more important is, what would change is what is the interest of the student in that country. And that's where we start looking at it in terms of students' interest and employability, and we need to link these courses with the industry which are prominently available in that country. So that's where the relevance and importance starts about students' interest and mobility. That's what we are talking about. Research and development is another area where we see a challenge coming up. Students don't do research, and that's where we say we need to motivate students to do research, so that in the bachelor's program itself they do research, they will be able to enhance their employability level. In India, we see a lot of challenge in terms of where a student does a bachelor program but doesn't get a job till he completes a master. And I'm sure in Europe it's the same way. And I would be very happy to see that if the students after the bachelor's level go for a job, learn for 2 years in the industry, and then come back to the university to do their masters. Because that's where the concepts and practice gets better linked, because they have more experience, they can understand things better. So we start looking at in terms of the research and development, which should be done at the bachelor's level, at the master's level, and I'm sure the doctoral qualifications which are now provided in Europe have also changed a lot with taught courses. And finally, I think one of the area which always remains a concern in many universities, and we give a lot of feedback to statutory bodies at different places, so I'm mentioning it here, is the women participation in the students' women participation. At the same time, women participation in academics, or it could be also in the non-teaching staff. So that could be one of the area. So these are focuses, keeping in mind this perspective of European background. I present the program which talks about the area as to how this would look like. And that's why we're talking about, if we are going to set up the goals, right, and the goals are going to be just 3: learning and development, research and development, and we are talking about resource mobilization within the university, as we see a lot of constraints in the economy which comes up. So these are the 3 goals which we are focusing on: learning development, research development, and resource mobilization. Obviously, we can talk about the objectives, but without people and the process, these objectives can never be achieved. And as a result, I'm talking about the people, where we need to take everyone together with their staff, their students, their various stakeholders from the ministry side, the management side, the administrative side. But one thing we need to know, that we're doing everything for the students. Because ultimately the student is one who is sitting in the class, who is going through the examination, who passes the exam, and he's going to be a product of this university. And as a result, the processes have to be right. So we are talking about the processes. And rest, when I look at the strategic assessment and reviews and strategic control, I'm talking about whether it's CRUP, or it is the European Quality Assurance Register, or we talk about the National Qualification Framework, or we talk about any other bodies like FCT. They are all available here to give the grants, go through the quality, external quality agencies, which we need to know about it. So looking at that, I said that these are the 3 strategies which we are talking about. Learning and development is the first strategy which we focused on, the objectives. That's what I'm going to talk about. The academic research initiatives, and then we are talking about the resource-based strategy. So the learning and development, we are talking about very simply 3 pointers which focuses on that our job is to enhance human capital. Human capital, what is the cost of human capital? What is the investment in human capital? It is never seen in the balance sheet of any organization. And imagine people like you and me are working throughout the year, 365 days, to enhance the human capital. So that's the first important aspect, that how do we enhance the human capital enhancement initiatives at the university? That's what we look at it. Create a teaching community that will bring that transformation, because certain methods of teaching, learning and assessments in the past, which has been used even at my time and your time, are not practical now. Because of the internet revolution, communication, that's all available, the students is quite well learned about various processes and as well as conceptual thoughts. And finally, most important, I've been always asked the question, what is the difference between an Indian student and students abroad? And I've always said, the software of mind does not change. Student is a student. Wherever you go, they may not read, they may not do the assignments on time, they will come late to the class, they may complete their research late, they will give projects late, everything would happen. So our job is to motivate the students. At the same time, see that they become very innovative and to do things. They become creative, they become enterprising. If they can't start the business on their own, we should build an intrapreneurial talent in them, so that in any organization they go, they are able to create those advice, guide, ideas, and communicate what new businesses the organizations can really do. Sure, no problem. Looking at the academic research initiatives, when we are talking about, we say that there are a lot of activities, but in research we are focusing on new initiatives which should come up in each disciplines, right? We need to create next generation researchers who understand what research is all about, because it's just not the academic job to do it. At the same time, how do we get connected with the society? The university job is not only to create students for jobs or employability or lifelong learning, but also create good, honest, responsible citizens. And that is what we are looking at it. So we need to reach to the students rather than student reaching us. So I'm talking about in terms of how do we extend beyond our boundaries, maybe through distance learning, communication, entrepreneurial capacity, providing that infrastructure that is required to support the various programs, space utilizations which takes place, because we are spread in different campuses. How do we really work this out? So we look at that. And finally, we cover up the academic research, which I just talked about, and the resource-based strategy. The statement of purposes, which I have mentioned here, where we talk about the academic innovation through research, global tie-ups. So we are talking about lifelong skills, mobility. We are talking about university exchange programs. I'm sure I will be having a lot of questions which would come up in these areas as soon as I finish the next 3 minutes. We're talking about the graduation rates, how to build up a strong alumni network, which is essential, internships which should be done, placements levels which should be enhanced. We're looking at academic innovation challenges, and especially in terms of focusing on faculty, recruitment, training and development of the staff. At the same time, there should be a cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary discussions so that we don't work in isolations or in a watertight compartment. Professional masters for the employability programs, enhancing our resources. And we look at the research grants and academic budgets which should be available to every faculty so that they are able to progress well. If you need to do all this, knowledge has to be managed because people can go, but the knowledge also goes with people. So we need to manage the knowledge also. So we're talking about the funding sources, interdisciplinary discussions that should take place. I have seen that there's a lot of citations which are happening, which have been recorded on the website by the university here. And I congratulate all the academic staff for that wonderful achievement which has been mentioned, including also the patents and licenses which have been mentioned up there. World-class academic institutions which we are talking about, living and learning communities in campus, because it's not just academics, but it is also fun-based learning we talk about, multimodal methods of learning, diversity, because we're talking about globalization and internationalizations, and we're looking at the university gateways in terms of having a diversified student population, having distance learning programs, and creating those distance learning units, and also getting the faculty and academy and the students involved as a corporate social responsibility. In management, we teach corporate social responsibilities, but at the same time, it's important that we also practice it here. And finally, the last one which we are talking about in terms of administrative setup, because without this, we cannot achieve our objectives, the first 5 ones. So the administrative, the management setup, the resource utilization, the finance utilization, the organization structure of the university, the standard operating procedures which are there, and a continuous training of academic and administrative staff at various levels by even participating in different university exchange programs, and the policy and systems design which takes place so that we know that we have these processes, because that's how I think quality works out everywhere, the internal quality assurance as well as the external audits that take place. So these are the theme of the program which we want to talk about, 6 points, statements of purpose. Which are fundamentally based on 3 strategies: resource, academic research, learning and development. Thank you, sir.
Ask the various commissions to initiate the question and answer process. And the first commission who will address questions to you is the Commission of Education, Quality and Evaluation. Portanto, pedia alguém da Comissão do Ensino para iniciar este processo. Temos 10 minutos antes de passar ao próximo. Com máximo 5 minutos. 5 minutes maximum for questions.
Thank you. Professor Rajesh Arora, maybe you can sit down.
I would prefer to stand and talk.
Don't you want to take some notes on the question?
I have the book here in case I require.
In fact, the Commission has 3 questions. The first one concerns social support to students and fees, and it is the following. Given that the Portuguese system of social support is unable to answer efficiently and quickly, how do you think that the University of Porto can offer its students the social support they need, such as emergency social services, canteens, house of residence? And where do you stand in what concerns the value of the fees to to charge to students in the several levels of education, bachelor, master, and doctoral programs? And finally, still in this question, what is your opinion on the very recent legal possibility of charging different fees to foreign students?
Okay. Can I get the first two questions once again?
The question was about social support to students, mainly the emergency social support, because government does not have a very efficient way of answering the needs
Sure.
of students. The second about fees, what is your position concerning raising or not raising fees?
Sure.
And finally about different fees for foreign students.
Okay.
This is just the first question.
No problem. Okay. But I would answer the reverse order first. I think I'm giving you the experience of the other countries right now. And there are different fees that are charged for foreign students, which is much higher than the fees that is charged from the local national population. So I would look forward for discussing it with the team as to how much fees that can be charged to foreign students who are going to be coming up in Portugal. This is one of the very important objectives which we should be achieving. As I see that there is a drop in admissions at US or in UK, in Australia, but countries like France and Germany have taken up the lead, and the number of admissions which has gone up in these two countries. Why not Portugal? Because the number of universities in Portugal are so many, right? And we look at the number of students who are going to do it, and where we see that the private universities are struggling with just 40% of their admissions, and only the public universities are going with 90% accommodation rates. So I would be definitely talking about globalization, internationalization, and welcoming the students. But yes, we can internally discuss as per the statutes and the ordinance of the university, and definitely there should be a different fee rate for the students coming from other nationalities. Yes, you may give a preferred treatment to the students coming from the European Union, because you are going to be having a common agreement with all the universities within the union. But beyond the union, you can charge a different rate. So that's what is the first part we're looking at it. The first two questions which you discussed about in terms of social support that needs to be provided to the students. And are you talking about in terms of the funding arrangements? Are you talking about in terms of the students' funding of their fees for the local people?
Yes, that was.
Yes, there should be a scholarship policies which are available in university. But yes, if you look at it in my presentation also, I hope I can refer it once again here. And we are talking about the meritorious scholarships based on the merit. And I also talked about promoting need-based scholarship for underprivileged categories for the communities. Now, one sharp difference which I see in the European context and the Indian context, which my colleague will also agree, is that in India we complete all our qualifications as if there is no next time in life. But when I went to Hereford University for the first time, I saw a matured learner sitting in front of me in a bachelor's program. I was shocked. I was surprised. But yes, that's how the students abroad who complete a particular level of course, one cycle, and they do a job, and they earn the money, and then they come back. So I'm sure we need to motivate students to look at different alternative opportunities if we are not able to provide them the scholarships on merit or on need based as per the university procedures. But that's where I would put out this question. I hope that answers your query.
Our second and third question,
Yes.
very quickly, is what is your assessment of the impact of the application of Bologna process in the quality of the teaching?
Sorry, what is the
What is the
impact of?
the application of Bologna process in the quality of teaching and in the profile of our graduates in the University of Porto, or at least in Europe in general, about the Bologna process? And the last one is a more general one, I suppose. That's presuming that you support the position of the University of Porto as a research institution, how would you define quality education in such a research university? Or in another way, what is the role of education in a research university?
I think can you repeat the first question for me once again, please? I'm sorry.
The first one was about the impact of Bologna process in the profile of the graduates and on the quality of teaching.
Okay. First is I've understood that there is as per the standardization norms, we have condensed the course to 3 years from a 4 years degree program. But at the same time, it's important for us to look at various quality assurance mechanisms which are there. The profile of the students when we are talking about, there is one element which we need to go back to the school environment and see that when the student registers for the first cycle, so there is a lot of alignment between the secondary school we are talking about and when the student enters to the bachelor's program. I believe a lot of academicians believe that the students are not ready, right? And as a result, sometimes the failure rates are higher in the first cycle of and especially that could happen in science, technology, engineering, mathematics field more as compared to the business or non-science areas. So as a result, it's important for us to look from that level to interact with the schools and see that how the courses could be aligned better. So that's the first part we look at it. Then you had the second part.
Second?
Yes.
The second part was about the role of education, of teaching in a research university.
The law of?
The role
of
teaching,
education.
Of education.
In a
research university.
Research university. I think the first level which we would love to promote at any point in time is that every university is being presented as an engine of knowledge, right? Universities are research-based institutions, and as a result, the academia is totally involved in doing a lot of research work, and this research work is going to benefit the students' community based on the subjects and specialization they're doing it. But at the same time, it is important for us that research work is also created in certain way which is connected with the industry. It is connected with the society. It is connected with the community. Now, if these research are going to take place, I'm sure there is a great possibility for the university to not only disseminate knowledge, but at the same time also find out opportunities for earning additional revenue, which has a direct linkage with the state funding, which also gets cut, and it's happening everywhere. So we need to find out how these research areas can be enhanced further. When we see so many citations happening, research papers published, patents available, then how do we see in the next 4 years that this can be upscaled and we are able to connect with the industry? So we can do a lot of research work and find out as to what are the options. And also getting the students involved in research is a very important element. Every student does research. I hear that there are 30,000 students in this university. Imagine 30,000 students doing research, and they are giving one research project at the university to their department. Imagine the amount of information that is getting created. And that is where I say this human resource has to be utilized. This human resource, information that is given, that has to further the body of knowledge, and it should contribute to the industry in a very, very different way. And I think that's how the university would be able to keep up its image as a research-based institution. So I would never divorce from that particular area at all.
Thank you, Professor. I'd like to now ask for the Commission d'Investigação, which is the R&D Commission, to present the questions.
Please.
Yes, Professor Arora.
Good morning.
If you want. Okay. The Committee of Research, Innovation and Internationalization has 4 questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is, which concrete measures do you propose to strengthen the R&D's unit's participation in the European programs, and in particular in the Horizon 2020?
Sure.
Second one is, we have seen a progressive aging of the university permanent staff, and a significant number of researchers have moved abroad. What do you recommend to attract young researchers and to improve their working conditions?
Okay.
Third one, the 51 R&D units associated to the University of Porto and recognized by the Portuguese National Research Funding Agency,
yes,
present very different scopes, different sizes, and different institutional models. They vary from the homogeneous research group hosted by a department in a faculty to the large multidisciplinary unit organized as an interface institute, which in some cases is mainly owned by the university, but in other cases the university is just a minor associate. What's your view on the ways to articulate all these research units with the faculties and the university?
Okay.
Last one, there is a recognizable misfit between the number of higher education institutions in Portugal and the countrysides. Some analysts quantify the number of viable research universities in Portugal as 1 or 2. But at the same time, we see that the classical and the technical universities in Lisbon have just merged into a large university.
Yes.
What is the strategy that you support with respect to cooperation with other universities, geographically close or not, national or international, namely in terms of educational offer coordination, joint PhD programs, and research? We are thinking on the universities of Minho and Trás-os-Montes, nearby, the University of Aveiro, the universities in Galicia, the American University Carnegie Mellon, MIT and Austin, and other European universities. Under a different perspective, which are the policies to increase cooperation with Portuguese-speaking countries? Thank you.
Thank you, and I thank you for giving me this sheet too. I'll address the questions one by one. The first question which I have is focusing on the concrete measures do you propose to strengthen the research and development units, participation in European programs, and in particularly in the Horizon 2020. I think first of all, I've been reading a lot on this subject, and I realized that the FCT and certain agencies are investing a lot of amount of money, talking about even the CCES, where they would like to create, I think almost a large number of researchers, young researchers by the 2020. There's some targets which has been fixed up. And when we start looking at this, the concrete measures which we would like to propose for these research development units is to look forward for industry participations, because we're doing research for whom? For the industry, for the businesses, in the economic context, we are doing some research in the social context, in the technological context. So we need to look at it, how do we see the European scenario in 2020? Keeping that in mind, the global vision of 2020, where we say the number of graduates have to be raised higher, right? Where we talk about how do we manage various innovative products, innovative services. So that's where I would say the first part which comes up in terms of the concrete measures to tie up with industry globally and also in Europe, in different parts of Europe, where this research can be done. So the R&D units needs to connect with them. I'm happy you are accepting one of the points here in terms of progressive aging of the university permanent staff. But I salute the permanent staff where they would have spent a lot of time in building up a 100 years institution. Now the question comes up is that how do we attract young researchers and improve their working conditions? I think the first thing, it's just not researchers, but I think even academicians. It's a lovely field to be in. And my philosophy will always be that any academicians or researchers, we are all young, because we are always among youngsters all the time. All right, that's how I always see it. But yes, if they work in the industry, initially after completing their 3+2+3 cycle, then if they work in the industry, then it makes a lot of sense for them to connect with the students and give them a lot of practical information onto what they are teaching. And as a result, we see that if we want to attract young researchers, I'm sure people are first going to look at the salary scales rather than just looking at the job, because the youth has a different expectation, and sometimes the industry can pay more as compared to the academia. We all professors are creating those students who sometimes earn much more than what the professor also gets. So we look at from that level that we provide not only in terms of the salary levels, but I think creating that work environment for them, that's very, very important. Starting with a coaching practice, which we said in the initial presentation, the budding principle, where we train them right from the beginning. So this is where we would look at If we are looking forward for attracting young researchers, then we need to find out what is their interest areas. I would be very happy if we have a discussion with those young researchers who are interested to participate in R&D units of the university, right, or who are going to be completing doctorates, or the universities are going to start with professional doctorates which are going to be used in industry rather than it is only for academics. If we start looking at it and we find out from the youth, from the students, what is their area of interest in research, rather than we communicating our interest of the research. I think that's where sometimes the discussions takes place, where the research guides or the professors communicate their own interest areas and they are not able to get sometimes the students to their side. So we need to know what are the interest areas they would like to do it, and as a result, going back to the master's qualification and bachelor, enhancing their observation skills are very important in what areas they need to do research. I want to remember my professor at this time who motivated me to do a doctorate and who told me this is one of the area which you can look at it, and he forced me to look in all those areas. And I'm blessed that I did that and I followed it. So I think that's where we would look at it. So salaries, I would leave it at the statutory level, but we need to create an environment, we need to create an environment of learning. And if young researchers are being given a chance to learn so many things, tomorrow they will become more independent and they can work out accordingly. The number of 51 research and development units which have been talked about, I would not read the entire thing. But yes, what's your view on the ways to articulate all these research units with the faculties and the universities? Most challenging questions you have given me this one, because first of all, I think there are different faculties, right? There's a business school and there are research and development units. Everyone is working with their own autonomy, right? It's important for us to know whether all these 51 units, and I'm just going to add with your permission, even the 14 faculties and the business school, everyone together, would they expect the university to imbibe their vision, or would the university create the vision and everyone would imbibe into that vision? I think that's a very important element. This is how I would like to answer this question, where we need to sit together and work it out as to how, whether the research units will coordinate with faculties and universities, because again I say we have a good amount of human resource available within the university. I'm sorry, I'm not aware how much of our students are utilized, right, in these research and development units and in these research work. But if it is happening, we are all blessed. And if it is not happening, I would say that's a one strong point which should be brought out on the foreground. The last one which we're talking about, the misfit between the number of higher education institutions in Portugal and the country size, which I completely agree with you. And we in India are also facing the same problem. And finally, the government has decided no to any other education institutions for the next 2 years or 3 years or so. You've talked about collaborations, you talked about mergers in this question. I'm not repeating everything. But yes, I think you're looking forward to know my views on everything. So first of all, I think there is a trend for mergers and between two universities. There are certain universities, different kinds of research that can be done, which is the standard desk research which we are doing it all the time. But at the same time, we are also looking at a research which can be done, which we call it as trans research. Or we talk about a research with public, private and university partnership research. That could happen. Research which could happen between two educational institutions together. That could be another, can I continue?
Yeah, just we need to pass to the next commission, so
sure.
if you could wrap up.
So there could be a collaboration between the public, private and university partnership. You've already talked about the joint PhD programs. We have a fantastic model which is working in Indian institutions also, where a student does the MBA in one particular place and he goes to another 3 places to do an MBA. So there could be joint Europe, I think everyone is following the Bologna process. So we can tie up with various institutions like this within Europe, and our students, our professors should interact with other universities to complete their process. So this is how I would look at in terms of cooperation within the last one line, sir. And within the context of the country, Portugal, we are talking about, I'm sure there are lots of universities with whom we should tie up. And it is not only for knowledge base, but it should also be for a social and cultural context, because that's how a student really learns. Because we need to create students for life, and that is where values, if they have to be taught, you can teach science, you can teach technology, you can teach mathematics and engineering, but you can't teach values. And that values are known only when students interact with other students from different universities and do work together.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to now call on the Commission of Planning and Finance to address the candidate.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, sir.
The Commission of Planning and Finances welcome you.
Thank you, sir.
University of Porto. And I would like just to ask you a couple of questions.
Please.
Regarding planning, I would like to ask you, of course, the university is a very complex environment, and you already put forward a number of key issues for the strategic vision of development of the University of Porto. But the Commission would like to ask you, what would be, in your opinion, the main area of concern, of strategic concern for development of the University of Porto? And if you could then, after identifying this area, to put forward some concrete measures that you'd like to implement regarding this area.
Okay, that's all. Fine. Thank you. I think when we're talking about in terms of planning, grade 5, I'm going to the school level. Grade 5 has taught me a basic principle: sales minus cost is profit. Right? We are a public university, we are not talking about profit. But the question is that we need to see that our revenue generation and cost are managed well. So when I look in terms of the priority areas, I'm looking first of all in terms of the intake analysis. I'm looking in terms of how many students in which areas, and which are the overrepresentative areas of the university, and which are the faculties or the courses which have less number of students. And that's where the entire energy has to be driven to enhance those number of students. Because that's where we would see the work has to happen more. So that's the first energy and first priority we would like to focus on. How do we get more number of students in those areas where it's less? We are going to have certain annual budgets, cash flow operations, activity analysis reports, which we are talking about, cost management issues. So these are certain fundamental things which would be on the priority basis to look for every faculty, research and development units, and also from the administrative side. And as a result, there has to be a strong connection between the two, because the administration and the management is a support function for the academia and for the research and development units. So the challenges that are faced, we need to be shock absorbers to absorb those shocks and take care of all these things in the background so that they are peacefully able to conduct their academic work as well as the research and development activities. That's how I would put this across in terms of these issues.
In a scenario of, current scenario of economic constraints,
Yes.
where the University of Porto will probably face in the next 4 years even more reductions in the money and funding it
Sure.
receives from the Portuguese state, the Commission would like to ask you, what would be your countermeasures regarding this problem? And particularly because there are already a few faculties, a few so organizations within the University of Porto that have had in the last economical year some negative results. And how would you expect to deal with this problem in the context of autonomy of these faculties?
Okay. Thank you. I think the first element that comes up is, I always said, without the root, there is no fruit, right? And from contact to contract, there is always a lead time. The first thing what we need is the student in the underrepresented areas. And as I had talked about in terms of the fee structure, that you may charge a different fee, whether for a European student or not, or people from outside the European Union. I definitely see in one of your reports which says one Indian student is also studying in University of Porto. Right? When I start looking at it, I think this is the first aspect we would look at in terms of the mobility aspect, that we are able to attract students from different countries. As we discussed, that number of institutions are large and the number of students are lesser in this economic environment. So these constraints are going to be there. You and me will not be able to make amendments in these constraints. And sometimes we need to live with those constraints. We need to live with autonomy and bureaucracy, which happens all over the world. But yes, I would love to talk about certain important elements which would come up. The first idea is to become self-sufficient and stable, and I'm very happy that you endorsed that certain faculties or departments could be into the negative area, which needs to be built up. So we all need to drive our energy to build that up momentum for those departments. And that is where my first success story would be in terms of being self-sufficient and stable. I heard a lot about patents, knowledge, research, development activities which are taking place. And these are one of the areas which we would love to harness on to get additional revenue. In fact, the organizations which I have shared with you in terms of international and national level, where I have done research, consulting and training for last 15 years of my life, I have so much of work which I would love to get it patented and the copyrights for all those once I get selected here as a rector. Nonetheless, there are certain pointers which I am presenting it to you as a foresight, as a thought, as a scenario planning for this situation. I thought this could be one of the elements. So we have the management development programs which are essential elements, because we need to bring back the experienced professionals from the industry to the university to give them that feel. So we can have short courses which would give a lot of benefit, and this is not only for Portugal, but you can get through the experienced professionals from other countries within Europe too. At the same time, you can also have the students, matured students who are coming from other countries beyond Europe too. So this is one aspect, the short-term certificate courses which we are talking about for matured learners and experienced professionals, which could be there, and the list is endless. If you look at it in the websites, you find so many courses happening and offered from various universities all across the world. Research on industry by assisting on industry associations. There are various industry associations. I see a lot of exports happening. I see a lot of service sector employments are there, but manufacturing and the agri sector doesn't have so much of employment generation opportunities. And as a result, we look at a lot of work that can be done there with the industry. Joint participation, I'll complete those pointers quickly. Joint participation in collaborative research programs with businesses, especially on new product development, embracing new kind of technology to be built up. So we look at it. Consulting large organizations on different fields on technical, legal, business, strategic issues to work out.
Professor, I think there's one last question.
Yes.
Finally, the Commission would like to ask you the following. In the last few years, the way funding have been allocated to the different faculties in the Porto University have been mostly based on historical data. In your opinion, what could be a better way of allocating these resources regarding the faculties?
I need to be honest. Okay. First thing, I always say for myself that I am good for my last teaching class, or I'm good for my last training program. I don't know about the next. So I would definitely say a big no-no for the historical data, right? What is important is in terms of the output that is being generated for the research project. That's an extremely important element for criteria for deciding allocation of funds to different faculties and the school. So that's where I would put the output generated work. At the same time, the effort that is being invested by various institutions, I would like to consider that too. The capability that has been built up by those institutions for doing that job is an important element. At certain places, I'm not aware about Portugal or University of Porto, but in certain places in India, we see that the funds are disbursed, but the research has not been completed even if the time is over. And as a result, tracking that research is an extremely important element. So these are certain elements which we would like to consider it, and I think that's how we can build up a matrix to evaluate it very objectively to see what should be the level of funding for every institution. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor Arora. I now, as coordinator of the Governance Commission, as I'm here, I've asked Professor Isabel Menezes to address you the questions from our Commission. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
So, bom dia. This is
Bom dia.
Portuguese for good morning.
Good morning. Bom dia.
I have three specific questions
Please.
on behalf of the Commission of Governance. The first is, what do you think are the 2 or 3 main weaknesses and main strengths of the University of Porto currently? And what do you propose to do to address these strengths and these weaknesses?
Okay.
I would go for the second question.
Sure. Please.
The second question is, can you talk about the main areas of governance in your team as a rector? I would imagine that you would have a team of vice rectors, pro-rectors that would help you. We would like to know about both the areas in which you would organize your governance, but also the profile of the people that you will involve in this process. And finally, as you know, the General Council is currently discussing a revision of the statutes of the university.
Okay.
And in this process, as I think you know, we are trying to balance the autonomy of the faculties and the leadership and the strategic leadership, let me say like this, of the rector. What do you think about this intention of a balance between the autonomy of the faculties and the leadership of the rector? And we would like to hear you about this.
Okay. Great. 3 questions have been asked to me with the strengths and weaknesses of the university. We're talking about the team which would be created once I get selected. And third is the autonomy versus the strategic leadership of the rector. That's what we need to answer. I think the first strength which I see is the 100 years of existence of the university. That's what we are talking about. At the same time, we are looking at in terms of the number of faculties, number of students that are there. 80% of your professors are completed their doctoral programs, which is, I think, a very commendable statistics which I look at it. Now, this is one part we look at it. In terms of weaknesses, areas of improvement I would call, rather than calling it as just weaknesses, because I'm sure we all can work towards it, because we are all knowledge creators here, we are all innovators here. So one is, I would talk about multimodal methods of teaching, learning and assessment, right? Because as the Bologna reforms talks about, that there has to be certain standardization in the curriculum and mobility of the students from one country to the other if they would like to change the course, and there has to be accumulation of credit. So multimodal methods of teaching should be taken care of. So that's the first area of improvements which I would focus on. The second is looking at the quality assurance not only from the internal perspective, but also like the EQR framework which is talking about the European standard guidelines which have been mentioned. So we need to see that we have adopted everything to focus on the same way, so that we are able to align the internal and the external quality assurances in a very interesting manner. And the third one which I have been talking about is the employability levels to be enhanced, because that's one of the biggest challenge which the students are facing today. So how do they get employed? And at the same time, with the huge history of the university, with the passing graduates, we need to track those alumni so that they are able to help us out in placing our students. And at the same time, we say that summer internship, practical training, right, these are certain elements which should be a part of the curriculum. If they are already a part of the curriculum, I'm happy. If they are not, then probably we can all sit together and work it out. So this is how I would address the first question. I hope that answers your query. The second, when we are talking about the team, I'm sure as the University of Porto has made a lot of details very public about this entire process, and I thank the members and the President of the General Council of giving all the informations right from the point of submitting the application. There will be certain qualifications criteria mentioned for the vice rectors and pro-rectors, which is going to be followed as per the statutes. Obviously, I'm sure looking at the doctoral qualification, the experience the person has, at the same time the interest that's available, and I would talk about in terms of especially in the areas of the quality assurance, talking about teaching, learning and assessments, internationalization to look at it. So these are certain important aspects of the job which we would look at it. And finally, another position for finance and administrative areas of the university. As the document very clearly says in the roles and responsibilities of the rector, and you can delegate certain responsibilities to the vice rectors and the pro-rectors. So this is how I would look at it from the experience angle of the individual. At the same time, not only the academic one, but also a little bit of dynamism, entrepreneurship, to deal with a lot of issues which are required at the university level. So, and cohesiveness and collaborative efforts with the team makes a lot of difference. So, the hard skills which are as per the statutes, and the soft skills element and the dynamism that would be required to steer heads a lot of work of the university with such a large number of students. So that's where we talk about the team. Autonomy and versus the rector. Very challenging question for me. I have to be prepared from day one. That is today itself, I would say. World over, I think I would like to talk about, and I'm sure the academia will pardon me for this because I'm also part of academics, because this is a very sensitive topic for every academicians all over the world when we talk about autonomy. Autonomy in terms of teaching, autonomy in terms of learning, and autonomy in terms of assessments is the professor's prerogative to decide as to how they would like to deliver the course and how they would like to enhance or assess how much the students have been able to learn. So this is one part of the professor's autonomy which I think has to be left with the professor and the student who are learning together and the person is teaching. Another area is research. Now, I say that these areas, when we talk about teaching, learning, assessments and research and innovation activities, these are important elements, and these are the areas of interest of the academic team where they should be left best because they are mature, they are knowledgeable, they know what they are doing, and that is how it has to be worked out. I have made a passing reference in one of my presentation and slide just today itself, and I said that we administrative and management people are the support functions for the academia. And that is where a collaborative effort is always required to steer ahead. I cannot drive the agenda of the university alone. We need a team to work together. And at the same time, you may be well equipped with your, as a dean or a director of a particular faculty. But at the same time, there are certain support areas which are required in terms of finance, administration to work out better. So I'm sure that has to be worked out well. And the rector, as we say, it is a coordinating and an auditing function which the rector normally takes care of. So I think that that's one precedence which we would be following it. But at the same time, my style of functioning would be more collaborative, more cohesive, sharing of information, discussions, and I think how things can work out collectively so that we don't work in any watertight compartments, we work together. So I think everyone is equally important for us. So I would not look from the perspective of you versus me or autonomy versus leadership. You are a leader in your area, I'm the leader in my area. And I think Dr. Ken Blanchard very clearly talked about the concept of shared leadership, which works out well. So I think that's how we need to really look at it. I think that's how I answer the third question.
Thank you, Professor. This ends the formal questioning by the four commissions on the General Council. We now have a final 20 minutes of questions from all members of the General Council, and no question should take longer than 2 minutes, the question, and we give priority to the two members of the General Council who are not on not on any commission, and that is Frei Bento and Dr. Pacheco Pereira, and obviously all other members of the commission. So we have 20 minutes and no question should be more than 2 minutes. Thank you. So, abre agora as perguntas, membros da comissão, com preferência para os dois membros do Conselho Geral.
Não é obrigatório.
So, good morning, Professor.
Good morning to you, sir.
I think that you have read something about the University of Porto before applying. And of course, we don't expect that you can have a deep understanding of the problems of the university. That comes with the job.
Sure.
But the things that you have read, what do you think is the main flaw of a Porto University?
Main flaw?
Yes. What goes wrong? Because you must have an idea about our university. And certainly, reading what you have read, studying what you have studied, you certainly have an idea about some weak point of our university, a concrete weak point. It could be wrong. You could be wrong. We don't expect that you be sure.
Sure.
But it's interesting for us to see what someone outside Portugal studying our university thinks about our problems. Thank you.
I think I'm really, I appreciate the way you have empathized with me, right? I respect that. And I would just like to say this answer in just 2 lines. One is the strategic orientation of the university, right, has to be completely in sync with the faculties. And the strategic plans which the faculties are preparing has to be completely in sync with the university plan. I think that's the first integration that is required. That's how I would present it. And the second we talk about in terms of is the alumni framework, employability levels of our students, just not in Portugal but beyond Portugal. So I would just say that these are the 2 important areas which needs to be given complete focus from day one. And I'll appeal for a lot of collaborative efforts in this area if we start working together.
Members of the Commission, I would like to make one more question. My colleague, Professor Isabel Meneas, asked you about the balance between the rector and the faculties.
Sure, sir.
I understand, and it's natural in any university, that there is always a friction, a natural friction and a positive friction between the independence of the great faculties of a university
Sure.
and the requirement for the rector and his team to show leadership. And obviously these 2 are natural frictions. I would like to understand from your experience, and picking up on what Dr. Pereira said, from your experience of other universities, how do you see this balance working out in other universities where you've been associated?
Very nice. I'm happy you gave me a chance to answer this. These challenges are going to be there in every academic institution, irrespective of the size of an institution. At the same time, even the universities are not going to be away from this. This is a very normal process. I repeat, as I said in the same question, at the end of it, I said I've been influenced by the learnings of Dr. Ken Blanchard, which talks about the shared leadership. It's no academic inputs, it's very practical, which says that the maturity level of the colleague is very important, which talks in terms of the ability and the willingness to do a job. And he very beautifully brings out the 4 levels of maturity, where he says the ability and willingness is high, you're at M4 level, but if you don't have it, you're at M1 level. We will never have problems with those individuals who are at M1 or M4 level, because at M4 level, whose ability is high and willingness is high, I would love to just delegate it to them. But the challenge comes up all over the world, is at M2 and M3. An M3 person says, I'm able, but I don't want to do it. An M2 person says, I'm not able, but I want to do it. So that's where you need to make a choice. And that is where we're talking about whether you use a selling style or a consultative style or a delegative style, because I still repeat, I'm dealing with matured audience, I'm dealing with intellectual people, and there has to be a way of communicating and discussing and creating those collaborative work environment so that we can work as a cohesive team. Ultimately, the brand University of Porto gets publicized everywhere.
Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to, on behalf of the university and the president, there's one more question. Sorry, we have one more question. I beg your pardon.
No problem.
Welcome, Professor Arora.
Thank you, sir.
I thank you very much for coming here. It's wonderful to have, in the selection of the Dean of the University of Porto, to have somebody from abroad that dares to come to this small country with a project, with a proposal, and is able to show us a sound project, discuss with us, and having the time to elaborate your proposal, to come with your wife, and to spend time among us. Let me tell you, for me, you are honoring the University of Porto. This is a sign that the University of Porto is open to the world. And in the day that I dare say, in 5-10 years, that we will have, maybe today, I don't know, a dean coming from abroad, that will mean that we'll be in a different course of integration in the international community. And for that, you give us a great flavor of internationalization by coming here, by showing your project. And I would say that for me personally, I have some Indian heritage, and it's with great pleasure that I see you. Having said that, I have one question to you,
please,
which is the following. Your presentation was very sound. Your paper that you sent before with your proposal is balanced. Basically, we listen to you and we agree with, I would say, with the overall project that you have to run a university. What I would like now is that you get off the middle of the road. Get off the middle of the road and tell us what you would do if you would be the owner of the Aurora University and the dean of the university, where your own creativity and your own pet projects for teaching and learning, what would be your mark? What would be personal? What would be the thing that you would like really to live a different university if you were the dean? That's the thing I would like you to talk about. Something very personal, very Aurora project.
I already talked about the vision which I have in mind, and with the number of universities which I flashed, which I was connected with, I'm sure it provides a good evidence that I love to travel across, be globally mobile and internationalize. That's the first step which I put across, and that's how we have learned. Now, when we talk about if I want to start on my own university and I would like to run it differently, what are those different things I'm going to do it? I'm very much influenced by the German model, right? In India, we have Indo-German training centers, which are recruiting students from the German companies, right? And the same model is used in Germany, right, where I go, at DHBW Germany, where the German companies come together and they recruit select students along with the academia. So that means the job is given to the students on day one. The university, the companies are spending the money, right, paying the fees of the student, right. Now, the model when it comes in terms of its execution, once the selection is done, the student is studying for 3 months, right, in the finance course, and goes back to that company for 3 months to do the practice. And then they do the marketing, they do the production, the operations, and they complete a 3 years program. So practically they are in touch to do it. At the same time, conceptually they are learning from the university. So there is a very strong and interesting integration which is taking place between the two. And I'm sure the academia and the industry has to join hands. Without that, we will not be able to produce, we will produce great knowledge workers, but they will not be able to apply anything. IT, engineering field today, right, is facing this challenge everywhere, because the person knows a lot of things, but the fields are changing so fast that by the time they complete the course and they are out in the market, they find that there are certain things they haven't learned, which may not be the case for a business school, because I teach Stephen Robbins what was taught to me. I teach Philip Kotler, which was also taught to me 20 years back. But yes, the market scenarios have changed. So the technical fields we need to really take care. So I would love to have a program which has an integration with the industry. Without that, it does not make sense at all. I'm sure. Will you fund my university?
Are there any more questions? Mais perguntas da nossa Comissão, Conselho Geral? Professor Arora, on behalf of the President and the General Council, I would like to echo the words of Professor Aguas in thanking you for having dedicated the time and the energy to come and present to us and submit your candidacy for the rector of this university. We all feel, as Professor Aguas said, honoured that you should consider that the university would be a career path for you. We don't know what will happen in the election later today, but we will definitely respect the fact that you came here and offered your skills to this university, and for the preparation of your presentation, which is obviously done with a lot of care and attention. We would like to thank you for that. On behalf of the President, I would also like to thank the members of the General Council for having prepared the questions, for having respected the timings and the discipline that has allowed us to have a productive dialogue here with you today. And for that, we'd like to thank you on behalf of the President for your and their care in preparation for this meeting. Absolutely. So finally, just to thank you very much, and we will be proceeding later with the other three candidates, and in due course the results will be known. But on behalf of the General Council and the University, we thank you very profoundly for having come here today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
E uma última palavra minha que se impõe, que é de agradecimento ao Vice-Presidente Pinton pelo facto de ter assumido a condução desta sessão. Fora eu, estávamos ainda a meio. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much.
I also want to thank the President of the General Council, right, Ms. Fatima, Dr. Fatima, sorry, and the Vice President, and the members for the very patient listening to my ideas and thoughts and asking me all those questions which were very important and apt for this position. And also thank the professors and the students and the academia community here who were also present to witness this event. Thanks a lot. God bless you. Stay connected. Good day. This is someone's paper.